better at defaults, then click again to bring it back. And that could make that temple look much shinier. I don't know if you can see it up in the gold of the temple. But the clue that tells me that I might want to try that is a gap or spike on the end. Then I'll do the same thing for the black. So as far as holding on Option and say, good, we have a small area of black. So that's usually indicating it's going to be a pretty good looking image. It doesn't, I shouldn't say it's going to be a pretty good looking image. Just, I've covered my bases, and I know there's not some small little tweak I could do to make it better. All right, then just because we have 6 minutes and I need to cover this at some point, I might as well do it now. The other thing I do in the develop module that's overly simple, and a lot of you have probably already done, but if you're new to Lightroom, might not know how to do yet, is cropping. So here I've opened an image. This is one of those temples in Burma. It's known as, the general area is called, I might butcher the name, but it's Bagan, or Bagan. And you can take a hot air balloon over it in the morning. It's an amazing experience because in a lot of these places, they're making bricks to build more temples, I think. And they're also cooking and doing other things. And you can get a lot of smoke and fog and stuff going between these buildings. And then with the sun coming up, catching all that, plus all the temples in the balloon, is an amazing experience. It's called Balloons over Bagan. If you ever go there, be sure you do that. Anyway, the crop tool is right above our adjustment sliders in this little area here. It's the one on the left. Click on that and it puts a cropping rectangle on my picture, and all I need to do is grab the edges of the picture and pull. And I'm just going to get rid of some distraction in this image to concentrate on what I think is the most interesting areas. Like that. To get out of the crop tool, just click the tool again. You're kind of toggling it on and off. And the histogram, I believe, will change when you do that, because now it's not going to look at the image as a whole anymore. It's going to look at only that area. And so sometimes you'll end up with gaps on the ends that you didn't have before and stuff because you cropped out the noonday sun, and therefore there's no longer a spike saying there's a large area of white, that kind of thing. So anyway, this image I think can use some black. You can see a gap on the left side. Bring this down until there's no gap. Option, Alt and Windows, so I can see it. It's a small area of black. That looks a lot better, I think. If I want to see more detail in the sky, more information, I can bring on the highlights. We haven't talked about color yet, though, and I think without the color there, it's not helping that much. Maybe bring up clarity to make things pop a little bit. So if there's no obvious problems with the image, I don't have to go in and do exposure and highlights and all that. Sometimes it's just a few sliders. Sometimes I want more shadow detail. It really depends on the image. We'll talk more later on about how to do things like adjust just the balloon and not the rest of the image. We can do that based on color, or we can do it by painting. And we'll get into that. We just need to slowly progress into things and not go too fast, I hope. So anyway, I think we covered the overall adjustment controls for tonality. Whenever I say tonality, I mean the tonal range in your image, which is another way of saying the brightness range. So if I ever use the word tonal or tonality, I mean brightness independent of color. So the other kind of adjustment would be color adjustments, and that's what we'll get into next. But what kind of questions do you get?
We have many questions.
I figure you would.
Yeah. So question from B.R. Coleman, who said, is there a limit to how much you should adjust exposure before you degrade your image? I have read just under 2 stops or over, just under 2 stops over or under.
I don't think that way myself. If the image is still too dark, then the option is, do I throw away the image or do I move it further? So I move it as far as you need. The one thing I would say is if you end up moving exposure or shadows a good amount until the image looks radically different than it did originally, like when I had that picture of the one waterfall that looked almost black to begin with. The next thing that I would end up thinking about is noise reduction, because noise is lurking in the dark portions of your picture, and bringing up exposure or bringing up shadows is going to make it easier to see the noise that's there. It's not that noise is being introduced by these sliders, it's that you just didn't notice it before because it was so dark. And now you've